The man had a gun pointed at my wife's face, hands trembling, eyes bulging with self-importance, right there in our front yard, and all because she jogged past the HOA clubhouse without identification. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. What he didn't know, and what I would have paid money to see dawn on his face, was that the woman he just tried to threaten with a knockoff Glock was an active Delta Force operative who had returned from a classified mission 2 days ago. She hadn't even unpacked her field gear yet, and now she was standing in front of a wannabe rental cop holding a pistol sideways, like he'd learned it from a bad action movie. I knew she could have disarmed him with a pine cone and a zip tie, but for once, she actually gave the guy a chance to surrender. He didn't take it. That's where things got real fast. We had moved into this neighborhood for peace. My wife, who once diffused explosives during a thunderstorm, wanted quiet mornings, garden work, maybe chickens in the backyard. I just wanted fiber internet and a finished basement for my cybersecurity projects. What we got instead was an HOA that ran the streets like a discount military operation. They called themselves the Home Safety Division, HSD for short. 4 matte black golf carts parked outside the clubhouse, each one with block letters stenciled on the side. Some even had blue lights zip-tied to the roof. They looked like SWAT units, if SWAT had cup holders and gnome decals. At first, I thought it was some neighborhood prank. Then I realized they were dead serious. The president, Karen Brewster, introduced herself on day one with laminated badges and 3 clipboards. She had a permanent smile that screamed, "I've never been challenged in my life." She gave us a booklet of rules, ridiculous things like grass may not exceed 2.75 inches, and residents must not appear intimidating during recreational activity. When I asked her what that meant, she grinned and said, "You'll know it when you see it." That's when I knew we were in trouble, but my wife just smiled politely and thanked her, like she hadn't just returned from extracting hostages overseas. She's good at that, blending in, keeping calm. Day 8 shattered that calm. My wife went out for her usual jog while I made coffee and logged into work. 10 minutes later, I got a motion alert from our security cameras. At first, I thought it was a delivery truck, but when I checked the feed, 2 HSD golf carts had parked diagonally across our street, and my wife was standing there, perfectly still, hands slightly raised. In front of her, a man, maybe 50, guts spilling out of a tactical vest, pointing a pistol at chest level and shouting about restricted jogging zones. That was the moment I realized we weren't dealing with neighbors enforcing lawn rules. We were dealing with armed cosplayers who thought they were above the law, and my wife wasn't about to let that slide. The man with the pistol kept barking orders, trying to sound like he'd seen one too many police dramas. "Hands higher, you're trespassing in a restricted jogging zone." His voice cracked halfway through, betraying just how little control he really had. My wife, Claire, didn't even flinch. She tilted her head the way she does when she's bored during briefings, then spoke calmly. "Sir, under Florida Statute 79.10, brandishing a firearm in a threatening manner is a felony. You should think very carefully about your next move." The HOA tough guy blinked. Clearly, no one had ever spoken back to him with authority before. "Don't you quote laws to me," he stammered. "This is HOA jurisdiction." Claire actually laughed. "The HOA doesn't outrank the U.S. Constitution," she said, voice flat, steady. "You've pointed an unregistered weapon at a civilian on private property. That's attempted assault with a deadly weapon." If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe, because the story is only going to get better. 2 other men in knockoff tactical vests flanked him, each holding batons like they'd bought them at a flea market. They shifted nervously, unsure whether to back him up or step out of the mess. That's when I stepped out of the front door, the coffee mug still in my hand. "Gentlemen," I said, "this is your last chance to walk away before things go sideways." The leader snapped toward me. "Stay out of this, sir. This is an official enforcement action under the Home Safety Division." Claire smirked. "Official?" she asked. Then in one smooth motion, she moved. I've seen her train. I've seen her take down men twice her size in less time than it takes me to blink. But watching it unfold in our front yard was something else entirely. She sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted, and in less than a heartbeat, the gun was out of his hand and skittering across the pavement. With her free hand, she shoved him backward into one of his cronies, knocking both into the grass. The third guy, apparently braver or dumber than the rest, rushed her with his baton raised. Claire ducked, swept his legs, and pinned him to the ground with her knee pressed lightly into his back. She didn't even break a sweat. Meanwhile, the supposed leader was clutching his wrist, groaning. "You broke it," he whined. Claire crouched down, face inches from his. No, she said softly. If I'd broken it, you wouldn't be holding it right now. That was a warning. Neighbors had already started gathering at their windows and porches, phones out, recording every second. One woman gasped, covering her mouth. Another whispered, "Is that Karen's crew?" That's when Karen herself appeared, marching across the street in her signature visor and clipboard, shrieking, "Arrest her! She assaulted my officers! You're all witnesses!" Claire stood, brushing dust off her hands, and looked Karen dead in the eye. "Your officers?" she said. "Lady, they're about to be defendants." And that's when the real cops showed up. The timing couldn't have been better. Just as Karen shrieked about her officers, the wail of sirens cut through the air. Two sheriff's cruisers rolled up, lights flashing, scattering the crowd of gawking neighbors. Deputies stepped out with hands on their belts, their eyes immediately locking onto the pathetic scene in my front yard. Three grown men in mismatched tactical gear sprawled across the grass, one whining about his wrist, another face down in the dirt under my wife's knee. "Drop the weapons," one deputy barked. "They already did," I said, pointing to the pistol lying 10 feet away. Claire stood and stepped back calmly, her Delta training on full display. Karen ran forward, flapping her clipboard like it was a badge. "Officers, arrest that woman immediately. She's out of control. She attacked my hired security." The deputy closest to her frowned. "Hired security? Ma'am, these men are impersonating law enforcement." He looked over at the three groaning wannabes. "You realize that under 18 U.S. Code, impersonating a federal officer is a felony, right?" One of the men started babbling instantly. "It wasn't my idea. Karen paid us. She said it was legal." That shut Karen up real quick. The deputies cuffed all three, reading off charges as they went: brandishing a firearm, impersonating an officer, attempted assault, conspiracy, and trespassing. Karen tried to slink away, but another deputy caught her by the arm. "Not so fast. You'll be coming with us too. Or did you think orchestrating a fake armed raid was going to slide under the radar?" Karen's face turned blotchy red. "This is harassment. I'm the HOA president. I demand you release me." The deputy just shook his head. "Lady, you're under arrest for solicitation to commit assault, conspiracy, and aiding and abetting impersonation of an officer." The crowd gasped. A few neighbors even cheered. I crossed my arms, finally letting myself grin. "You should have stuck to writing passive-aggressive letters, Karen." Claire retrieved the coffee mug I'd set on the porch railing and handed it back to me like nothing had happened. "Told you it wouldn't take long," she said. Watching Karen get shoved into the back of a squad car was satisfying, but the aftermath was even better. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, and within a week, Karen was permanently removed as president. With pending felony charges, fines, and half the neighborhood suing her for endangering the community, she was finished. The men she hired didn't fare much better. They were denied bail, facing years behind bars. And as for the HOA, their reputation was in shambles. No one wanted to touch leadership with a 10-foot pole. Neighbors started coming by to thank us, shaking Claire's hand with awe in their eyes. Some had known she'd served, but none realized she was still active Delta Force. I leaned back on the porch that evening, watching the sun dip low. "So," I said, "think they'll try this again?" Claire sipped her tea and smirked. "If they're stupid enough, I'll be ready." And trust me, the whole neighborhood knew after that night the HOA had finally picked the wrong family. From that day on, the HOA learned one brutal truth: if you come after my family, you'd better be ready for war.